Hello there, and thank you for joining us from wherever you are. We're coming to you live from our studios in Kokomlemle on digital address GA 0992539. Our top stories this hour. 10 inmates of a Sherman police station test positive to coronavirus, and that's 10 out of 54 samples taken. We're live in a Sherman this afternoon for the details and the very latest. Also, partial lockdown or curfew recommended for Obuasi as it becomes the epicenter of the coronavirus infections in the Ashanti region. 80% of the cases there are in Obuasi. We'll get details of that recommendation from authorities in Obuasi. And also coming up, the Supreme Court dismisses suit challenging the eligibility of Martin Amidu as special prosecutor. We hear from former Deputy Attorney General Dr. Dominic Ayene, who filed the case at the Supreme Court. Those are top stories this hour. Join us on DSTV 421, Go TV 144. Remember, we're streaming live on YouTube. You can join us there. But we're waiting for your opinions, your thoughts, your questions on 0540-109009. My name is Gifty Andopia. This is The Pulse. Please be my guest. And we start in Obuasi. Assemblies within the Obuasi municipality are recommending restriction of movement of people following the upsurge of COVID-19 cases in the area. The assemblies at a joint emergency municipal security council meeting adopted a proposal from the Assembly's Public Health Emergency Committee for either a partial lockdown or curfew to be imposed on Obuasi. Chief Executive for the Obuasi municipality, Elijah Adansibona, tells my colleague Ohim Interior of our health desk recommendations calling for the restrictions on movement of people would be forwarded to the presidency through the Ashanti Regional Coordinating Council. The recommendation also comes as the two assemblies record 456 coronavirus positive cases. The area has in the last 2 months seen its COVID-19 cases jump from 3 to 456, representing about 80% of total number of cases recorded in the entire of the Ashanti region.
Graph plotted now, I can say that almost every suburb has 1 or 2 cases, because if you have about 456 of them and you even share among the suburbs, clearly you can say that almost every suburb. But I can say that there are some few towns, especially those far from the main, the urbanized area, where we've not recorded cases. But the main, the urban center, talking of Obuasi proper, almost every suburb has a case. So we are advising that they shouldn't move. Initially, when one suburb was mentioned to have recorded a case, everybody was moving from that area to the other centers. And I'm telling you, and now I can say that that contributed to the spread. So now everybody must stay at where he or she is, because you might not know where you're going, the state of the suburb. So let's stay, as we always say, if you move, the virus moves. If you stay, it stays. That will help containing the virus. For them, they want to reach the people at home. For example, if it is a curfew, and let's say it starts from 4:30 p.m., according to them, they can go to their homes after 4 and then reach them at home, take their samples. But if it is, let's say, lockdown, that partial or full lockdown, yes, you may have a lot of people at home, but you cannot also rule out the fact that people will go through hardship, because there are people who live on what they make every day. So if such people are being locked down, how are they also going to make it? We saw it during the Accra Kumasi and then the Kaswa one. So learning from that, I think partial or curfew, I don't want to, because my president is the best person to impose it on us. But we will make the recommendation. We are talking about the security agencies, the police, immigration, prisons, and the clinicians, talking about the doctors and the public health nurses who have been helping us in the fight against COVID-19, as well as the leadership of Obuasi East and Obuasi Municipal. We met yesterday and took decisions on some of the issues that came up, from reopening of the market, enforcement, isolation centers, and what have you. So when we met yesterday, the clinicians also said something, that any form of restriction that can also enhance contact tracing would be appreciated. And I'm not an expert in terms of health issues. They have advised we would also escalate the advice to our bosses. So whatever decision that will be taken from the center, we have to respect that. But if you ask me, yes, either partial lockdown or curfew, but that can be announced by the president. So we're waiting for what the center will tell us. But we are doing our best before the center takes any decision and then impose it on us. I believe they know better, and whatever they do, whatever decision they take and then implement it, I know it will serve our people better.
In the meantime, fear has gripped residents of Obuasi following the increasing number of cases of COVID-19 there. Some residents are appealing to government to lock down the town as health authorities highlight challenges of halting the spread. They believe that further delayed action can worsen the mining town's case count, which is currently the highest, like I said earlier, in the Ashanti region. My colleague Ohemi Terry of our health desk has more in his report.
Out of a total of 483 COVID-19 cases recorded in the Ashanti region, Obuasi accounts for 272, making it the hottest spot for the virus. The town also has the highest number of over 4,000 samples tested. Authorities blame complacency and the negative attitude of some residents for the upsurge in cases. Market women especially have been flouting social distancing protocols, forcing authorities to close Obuasi Central Market A and B to business indefinitely. Armed security personnel had to be deployed to ward off resistance from residents protesting the setting up of an isolation center. Health authorities appear to face a Herculean task in dealing with the human factor of the fight.
We should be so concerned about the figures. And not even only the figures, but if my sample was taken 3 weeks back and I've now had the results and it's positive, what happened from the day of the sample taking and the day I had my results? Where have I been to? Who and who have I mingled with? So it's a very big concern. It makes contact tracing very difficult because the case would have even lost remembrance of who and who they have had contact with. These people are not people who were sick. You know, it is community sample taking, voluntary community sample taking. So it means they were in their houses, they were at their workplaces, no sign of sickness. So then if you take my sample, I go about my normal duties with my colleagues, with my customers, with everybody. I go to the same market with any other person. And so my result came and I proved positive. So it makes it very dangerous.
In the midst of the dilemma, some residents want immediate lockdown of the new epicenter of the coronavirus in Obuasi.
When the cases start coming, we never expected, because Obuasi, you know, we are safe, but just 1 week time, we started confirming cases. And for about 1 week, we have confirmed about 256 cases. So it's dangerous living in Obuasi for now. I never understand why Obuasi was not part of the places they locked down, because first 3 cases that they confirmed, 1 was from Obuasi. So what I was expecting from the president just last Sunday was Obuasi to lock down, because checking some of the regions, Obuasi cases are even higher than some of the regions. So Obuasi should have been locked down even more than 1 week or 2 weeks, because at least getting locked down and being safe is better than getting the virus.
In fact, I'm scaring, because right now we don't know who tested the positive. and we are all moving around. What I think is our opinion leaders and then the MCEs and DCEs have to come together and then consult the government if they can even lock Obuasi at least 1 week. Safety first, though it's hard, but at least 1 week is enough.
From Obuasi, Ohiminteria reporting.
And we'll be live in Obuasi, but in the meantime, some COVID-19 patients in Obuasi have been relocated to another isolation center under tight security. The transfer follows a successful takeover of the facility by armed members of the COVID-19 security task force. The COVID-19 task force last night forcibly broke into the private facility at Akaporiso suburb, put under lock and key by some angry residents. Residents who have been protesting over the siting of that center there locked and blocked the two main entrances and roads leading to the facility with padlocks and concrete blocks.
It's gradually becoming the epicenter of COVID-19 in the Ashanti region. The area, as at Monday, May 10, 2020, has recorded 261, more than half of 483 COVID-19 cases recorded in the entire Ashanti region. Local and health authorities are concerned with the surge in coronavirus cases despite efforts to curb the spread. They blame lack of attitudinal change on the part of residents, especially market women, for throwing caution, including social distancing protocols, to the wind. Health authorities met strong resistance from residents of Akaporiso suburb as they prepare an isolation center for some COVID-19 patients. The angry youth blocked the main road to the facility and put the main entrance under lock and key because the center could pose health risks to the community. They also packed concrete blocks to block one of the main entrances. After several attempts to convince the angry youth to rescind their decision failed, the Obuasi East Assembly resolved to use force.
We've given them enough education for about 2-3 days. We've spoken with them. The head directorate has gone to speak with them. The chief, the assembly member, the unit committee, we've met them. They are still resisting. So the next option is force. So today, all things being equal, we'll have to send them there because we can't continue keeping them in their various homes because most of them share basic facilities with other people in their homes. So today we had a dissect meeting and we concluded that the security personnel should make sure that the people pave way for the patient to be taken to the center.
The community is not happy of the decision of the convent committee and the assembly to evacuate our brothers and sisters who have been infected with the virus to be isolated in that community.
At about 8 p.m. Monday, all was set for the COVID-19 task force to come face to face with the angry youth. Obuasi District Commander DSP Martin Asenso is leading the charge.
If the road has been blocked, we shall go there and remove them. If you have any person or persons gathered, we shall also arrest them.
The armed team forcibly broke padlocks to pave way for the transfer of the patients to the facility. In less than an hour, the operation was over. DSP Martin Asenso is the Obuasi District Commander. He says all isolation centers will be henceforth manned by armed security personnel.
The inhabitants went and locked the main door of the compound. They used their own padlock to, lock the place. So I have to break in to make access to that particular place. At the moment, we have put security there, 24-hour guard for that particular place, because if you don't do this, it will also affect other community that, when we are bringing this, the people say, I don't agree, why are you bringing this place? You know that. So this is what the decision the DASEC have taken, the convent committee have taken, they are going to abide for this matter.
From Obuasi, for JoyNews, Ohiminteria reporting.
I'm curious to hear from you if you live in Obuasi or its environs. What do you feel? How do you feel? What do you think about this story? Share your thought with us on our WhatsApp platform 0540109009. I'm going straight to Obuasi with you right now. Ohime Interior is standing by for us. Hello, Ohime.
Hello, Gifty.
Ohime, this is rather a bizarre situation the security authorities there have on their hands. The security and the health authorities there. What is the situation in Obuasi today after that operation last night?
For the relocation or transfer of the COVID-19 patients to this isolation center at Akaporiso, Obuasi suburb, I must say, since after that operation, nothing new has happened. There hasn't been any agitation, there hasn't been any attacks or whatsoever on this particular premises that was seized by these angry youths. So yes, police have put 24-hour security surveillance at the particular spot, meaning that nobody can intrude into this facility. And what we do know is that there are 2 isolation centers in Obuasi, and police is providing 24-hour security to all these isolation centers. But just yesterday, the Obuasi Municipal Assembly and that of the Obuasi East District Assembly had a joint Security Council meeting, and the decision that they took was that because of what is happening here in Obuasi, first, there was a recommendation from the Public Health Emergency Committee, which proposed to the Assembly that because of the surging number of COVID-19 cases, there's a need to restrict the movement of people in Obuasi. So they are suggesting that either the government help introduce a partial lockdown or a curfew in Obuasi to control the surge in the number of COVID-19 cases, or restrict the movement of people. That will go a long way to affect the measures that they are introducing to control the spread. Gifty.
Speaking of which, that request came in, I think, yesterday. Have they received any feedback from the authorities that they forwarded the recommendation to?
Not at all. The meeting was held yesterday, and according to the Municipal Chief Executive Elijah Adansibona, the recommendations will be sent to the through the regional minister, Mr. Simon Osemensa, to the Jubilee House, Flagstaff House, for approval. He tells me that it's only the president who can say he's locking up an area. It's above the Obuasi Municipal Assembly or the District Assembly, so they will wait till the president take a decision on that one. And he says these recommendations will be sent today. So it is too early to say the recommendations have been sent.
Interesting indeed. Let's talk about this particular isolation center that came under attack. What we have seen across the country is that communities will resist the attempt to bring in any people, in places that are set up as isolation centers. So government increasingly is hiding the identity of such isolation centers. How did the people know that this particular place they attacked was an isolation center? And what are authorities doing to make sure that the place that these people have been relocated to is not known to the people there?
Yes, Gifty, that remains $1 million question. What we do know is that probably residents sense or pick up these signals when health authorities or members of the COVID-19 task force visited this facility in question. Let me give you some background to this facility. It was built as a hotel, to be served as a hotel facility, but somewhere along the line, the owner rented the facility out to be used as a clinic in Obuasi. So all this while, the place is known to be a clinic, but the owners also decided to hand over the facility to the Municipal Health Directorate to be used as an isolation center. So I'm told even before authorities went to the facility, residents have already massed up, and every now and then they used to visit the area until they carried through the threat by first blocking the road leading to the facility and also went ahead to put the place under lock and key, which means that they went to market, bought their own padlock and lock up the place. As if that is not enough, they also packed concrete blocks at one of the two entrances of the facility, which would have made movement or entry to the facility very difficult. So at the time that the security operatives besieged the facility, they had to forcibly break into the facility before the health authorities could prepare the facility for use as an isolation center. So the police have done what I would say a yeoman's job, because beyond breaking into the facility, they've also provided 24-hour security, which means that it will be difficult for anybody to intrude or to enter this facility apart from the authorized agents of the Ghana Health Service or members of the COVID-19 team. Okay. And I must say, if we are talking about hiding the identity of the positive cases, it is possible, because this facility is a ward facility. The walls are very high, and then it's also somehow secluded in a bit. So it will be difficult for anybody to see who will be sent to this isolation center. Gifty.
Ohemi, thank you so much for that update. We'll certainly appreciate all the reports that you keep bringing in, and we'll be relying on you for the rest. Ohemi Interior is on our health desk, also on our security desk. So this is as much a health story as it is a security story. Ohemi has been on that for us in that region. In the meantime, we're still in the Ashanti region. The Regional Health Directorate says it is sending a reinforcement team to Obuasi to help contain the spread of the disease. More teams of medical professionals from the region will be sent there to strengthen the contact tracing, isolating and treatment of the medical treatment by the medical teams. It has become very critical. Regional Health Director Dr. Emmanuel Tinkran revealed this to Love FM's Prince Apia in an interview.
The Ashanti region case counts currently stands at 662. Out of which Obuasi, the new hotspot, accounts for 80% of this number. Officials say about 100 infections in the Obuasi situation can be traced to 2 persons who tested positive. Regional Health Director Dr. Emmanuel Tinkran says the team from Kumasi will augment local efforts to contain the spread of the COVID-19.
The challenge we are having right now is with Obuasi community. But when the initial phase, you realize that most of the cases were coming from Kumasi. But now it seems the trend has changed. For us, Kumasi has done so well to contain the infection. We are having rather the reverse in Obuasi. Initially, we thought that Obuasi could have managed, but this time their situation is not good enough. You don't know any person that you come across and you don't observe the protocols, the social distancing, the wearing of face masks may give you the infection. And this person can spread the infection over and over. So that's the situation that Obuasi finds. But one thing is that we are looking at the progress and then putting in the necessary intervention so as to reduce the spread in Obuasi. We've strengthened the medical team there, and we've redesigned another strategy. So now we are sending a reinforcement to Obuasi. And we believe that with this reinforcement and with other measures that has been taken by the municipal, Obuasi municipal itself and the Obuasi East, we can contain the infection at Obuasi so as to cut the transmission and then save the people of Obuasi.
Okay, so the reinforcement in what capacity?
The reinforcement is that the medical team will have to be strengthened. The contact tracing will have to be strengthened. The principle of tracing, testing, isolation, and treatment will have to be strengthened. So it means that we have to send more teams. And this is exactly what we are doing. We have to send more teams and make sure that we identify, isolate, and then those that will need treatment, we treat. So formerly it was only the medical team at Obuasi that was working, but this time the region has come in and has given the reinforcement that we all need to see.
Meanwhile, there have been calls to lock down the city in the face of the current development. Dr. Tinkran says it is necessary to assess the situation and weigh the pros and cons before a decision is taken.
We will need to assess this carefully. because as you all realize, the lockdown has its own implications and the challenges that's associated with it. So whatever decision or measures that we want to take in place should be measured. We should do a lot of weighing, yes, balancing act, so as to take the right decision. So though people are proposing lockdown and other things, but I always say that the best thing is for all of us to assess, and every decision will have to come from our president, and based on the advice that he has a technical team that will be given to him. So as I said, we will have to assess the situation and then weigh the merits of lockdown or not before any decision is taken. But whatever decision is taken, we'll make sure that we work within the framework.
He spoke to Love News when Sandvik Mining and Construction Ghana donated anti-COVID-19 items worth 150,000 Ghana cedis to the Directorate. Samuel Brewu is the Human Resource Manager.
And we are grateful that we are of use in such a situation like this. Sandvik has a history of interventions in the areas that we operate in. Basically, the quantities are 400 nose masks, 100 per each pack, so 100 packs of hand gloves with a quantity of 100 for each pack. And then 500 milliliters hand sanitizers, we have 4,300 pieces to deliver to the regional directorate.
Meanwhile, the Directorate wants more benevolent individuals and institutions to continue supporting with PPEs.
We need a lot of PPEs to work with. So we are very grateful that you've provided us with these PPEs. We will thank you and then ask that other benevolent donors should also come to our aid, because the number of cases are still going up. If you can look at the data, you realize that this is the time that we need more assistance. What we want to tell people in the Ashanti region is that our cases are going up. During the lockdown, we're having a lot of support, but this time it seems that the support has dwindled. So I would like to take this opportunity to invite all donors to come in and support the government, because the government is doing its best, but we still need other donors to support us.
Prince Apia reporting.
I'll take some of your comments. I'll go on a break. But before that, I'm going back to Obuasi. Ohime is still with me for a quick one on the market. Ohime, the market was also closed down because social distancing protocols were not being observed. That's something we left out. Tell us more.
Yes, Gifty, the market was closed down just last week by the Assembly. According to the Assembly, it was appalled by the fact that traders in the market, including patrons, were abusing social distancing protocols. They were not adhering to those protocols, and the numbers were so huge that the Assembly estimates at least not less than 3,000 people visiting or patronizing the Obuasi Central Markets A and B. So we later learned that the market has also become the epicenter for the coronavirus pandemic, when we learned a couple and have been the source of transmission for the virus. But when I spoke to Mr. Elijah Adansimona this afternoon, he told me that the Assembly has been trying to group the traders into sessions, of which they are trying to also reduce the number of traders that will use the market facility. He says, all things being equal, the market could be opened for the first time in about 1 week to the traders. And this time around, they are doing everything possible to reduce the numbers. The market is home to about 1,500 traders. And he tells me they are looking at 500 traders on a day. So only those who are authorized will be allowed to enter the market to trade their wares and also to patronize the market. But once they are also talking about the fact that there are recommendations for Obuasi, movement of people to be restricted in Obuasi, it is not too clear whether the market will be opened to the public tomorrow.
Right. Ohime, thank you for that update. Most of you are sending your comments in and you are backing that call by some people in Obuasi for the town to be locked down. I'll read some of that for you before we go on a very quick break. This one says, Farouk is sending this from Tamale. He says, the president has always been misled. The lifting of the lockdown is the cause of the high number of COVID cases. Hashtag stay safe, stay home. This one says the credibility of judges. We're talking about judges. We're talking at the moment about Obuasi and the cases there. He says, I believe the curfew is a way to go. Lockdown won't help at all because most of the residents will start moving out of the town as well, that essentially spreading the disease. Remember also that Obuasi was not part of the lockdown areas in the Ashanti region. Therefore, the surge in the confirmed cases may be due to those who moved from Greater Kumasi to Obuasi during the period. Yakub True from Wenchi Banda line send that message. And Peter from Techiman says the minority shouldn't. Okay, a lot of politics for you there, but we'll focus on coronavirus. This one says, seriously, Obuasi's problems has to do with unserious and non-proactive leadership. As it stands now, there's no proper education ongoing. The MCE and DCE are so relaxed all this while. It is really sad. You don't add your name. I still have a lot more messages, but I have to take a break now. Welcome back and many thanks for staying with us. Now, Germany is one of the countries which received global praise for its handling of the initial wave of coronavirus. Now, the European country is facing a new challenge, that's maintaining that level of vigilance as cases decline and public life resumes some semblance of normalcy. There is some growing pushback, though, against restrictions, which William Grocroft, with our partners DW in Berlin, is here to tell us more about. First of all, he's going to tell us how Germany is finding that balance between social and economic pressures as well as public health needs. Hello, William, it's good to have you. So do tell us about how Germany...
It's good to be here
right.
to be speaking with you.
Tell us about how Germany is achieving that balance.
Well, it remains to be seen if it really is achieving that balance. That is the question that everybody is asking themselves, public officials, health officials, and of course ordinary people. As Germany, like many other countries, starts to loosen the restrictions. Angela Merkel was before Parliament today again repeating what she said many times, which is, let's not give up the success that we've had so far. Let's build on that success, and how much of a tragedy it would be if Germany were to start going backwards and start seeing renewed infection, a wider outbreak again. Now that people are starting to go back to work, that shops are opening, that some school classes are going back to school, and there's even talk about how and when to open up preschools. There is this major challenge, though, because you have a lot of competing interests. You have parents who want to get their kids back to school, but you have teachers saying we can't really do that. We don't know how to maintain the safety measures and provide a safe atmosphere for children. The preschool teachers, it's even a more difficult situation because you need more space for fewer children, so there's just simply not the space and the resources for it. And many of the teachers themselves are in an at-risk group, meaning they can't go back to work because they might be exposed to the virus and could have very terrible consequences for them. So there's a lot of competing interests here, a lot of conflicts within society, and of course to balance on the other side with the public health situation as the reproduction number fluctuates around one being the magic number to show just how fast or slow the outbreak is spreading in Germany. Which many epidemiologists and public health experts are saying purely from the perspective of the outbreak, it's much too soon to be opening up and relaxing the restrictions.
That's certainly a debate we're having here as well. But right this afternoon, before I came to talk to you, it was a disturbing situation in one of the towns in the mining community where the youth actually went to block the entrance of an isolation center. What sort of public support are German authorities receiving with the restrictions that they're putting in place and with the responses that they're putting in place to coronavirus?
Yes, that example you gave from your neck of the woods sounds very similar to what some people, or the way some people are reacting in my neck of the woods. There is a small but very vocal minority of extreme right, extreme left political people from the extremes of that political spectrum who are taking to the streets, sometimes illegally, violating the pandemic restrictions, violating even the rules for how to form a proper demonstration on the street, to show that they are upset, that they feel that their rights are being violated, to think that there is some kind of conspiracy afoot that is keeping their rights repressed. But of course, public health officials, and I should say government officials, are saying we would very much like to return to normalcy just like everybody else would, but the health situation just does not allow for it right now. But it should be said that the majority of Germans are still supporting the government. They still understand the need for these restrictions, or I should say the slower easing into some kind of normalcy. Of course, we're down from the highs of 80 or 90% of support that we saw earlier in this pandemic crisis. Now about 2/3 of Germans, polls show, support the government, trust the government, believe that the measures are appropriate. But at the same time, it's interesting to note that a majority of Germans also fully expect the restrictions to continue to loosen and to continue to ease up. So that will be an interesting potential conflict going forward, both trusting the government in their decisions, but also expecting that the government will continue down this path of loosening restrictions. And if that doesn't happen, if the outbreak means that we have to start tightening up restrictions again, what that might do to public support is something that we'll just have to see develop over the next several weeks.
What sort of concerns are public health experts raising with some of these protests? For example, we've seen some of those protests in the United States of America where some of them want restrictions to be eased. We haven't seen such protests here in Ghana, but we've seen them in areas where isolation centers have been set up and the people don't want them to be there. What are public experts saying? Because that's also an avenue for the spread of the disease if one person has it.
Yes, absolutely. There's a great concern that in these large groups of protests, again, there were more than 1,200 people gathered illegally in Berlin for a protest on the weekend, 3,000 in Munich, 10,000 in Stuttgart, also protests happening all around the country. And there is concern that these could be vectors for the disease with so many people gathering at once, not abiding by the distancing standards, not really wearing masks. And being aggressive towards police. It also puts state workers and authorities at risk for them doing their jobs. So far, government officials are not too worried that this kind of aggression, this kind of protest action that we're seeing is really going to spread because, as I said, the majority of Germans are still behind the government and still understand the reason for this exceptional situation that we're in now in society. But you only have to go back to the 2015 migration crisis to understand that at that time, a lot of the right-wing sentiment and the populist sentiment going on in Germany at the time really found its voice in that moment and became what we have today, where we have an established right-wing party, far-right party in parliament. So what the political consequences of this crisis are going to be is really something we can't see yet, whether this will become, whether this will remain just a protest of the people on the fringes of the far right and the far left, conspiracy theorists, or whether this will become a true movement. That's something that public officials are going to have to keep an eye on very closely as the pandemic is continued to be dealt with over the next weeks and months.
William, thank you for that update. William Glowcroft is correspondent with our partners DW. He's joining us all the way from Berlin with those updates. Now, we'll take a look at what the world outlook is like. Most of you are still sending messages about Obuasi. I'll take some of those messages. We'll take a look at the worldometer and what it says. This text, well, there we go with the worldometer. So the number of coronavirus cases that we've had around the world or across the world is up above 4 million. That's 4,373,773 cases as of today. Now, 294,325 people have died. But the good thing is 1,621,456 people have recovered. So that's what the world outlook is at the moment. So some of you have your messages here before we move on to our next story. It says, Gifty, we're now experiencing the animal farm kingdom rule in Ghana, where 2 legs good, that's NPP, and 4 legs bad, NDC, is the other way around. You're talking about the court case today. Well, that's in our headlines. We haven't tackled that story as yet. Let's take a look at the Obuasi situation a bit more. It says the Obuasi situation is a peculiar one and requires a quick response by government to curb the situation. If the natives think curfew will solve the problems, looking at the settlement nature where overcrowding is one of the problems, an immediate curfew will help. Noah Sabuli in Tamale. Noah, thank you for watching and thank you for sending your message in. Bernard from Obuasi. Well, Bernard says, oh, this is my name is Kweku from Accra. I think some Ghanaians will have to be disciplined. The affected persons are our own brothers and sisters in the community. The security personnel are to be congratulated. The Obuasi locked COVID-19 isolation places as a result of illiteracy, and I believe the next 10 years, when Nana's free SHS train literate citizens, things like that shall be issues of the past. You don't add your name. Thank you. This is a resident of Obuasi. He says, as a resident of Obuasi, I think the virus is getting more closer to us. For that matter, a curfew will help reduce the spread of the virus. I will advise we wear our face masks not only to protect ourselves, but other people around us. May Allah help us. Ridwan Mohammed, Obuasi Pomposo. Ridwan, also talk to the people around you and hopefully we will get there. Malvino is texting from Ofankor, North Hills. He says, I seriously think Obuasi should be locked down immediately before they bring it to us here in Accra again. In that sense, the virus would keep circulating. Well, Accra is actually topping the chart. So we here in Accra need to also do our best to stay away from it. I'll do as much as possible with your messages when I have the time. Right now, let's move on to our next story. Still related to COVID-19. Now, 10 out of 54 inmates at their Sherman police cells have tested positive for coronavirus. JoyNews understands authorities there are still awaiting results for the remaining 44. Those who have tested positive so far have been isolated. So let's go live now to the area and speak to JoyNews' Mamiesi Nyamiche Thompson, who has been following this for us. Mamiesi, what more do we know? 10 out of 54.
Yes, Gifty, rightly so. 2 weeks ago, some inmates were exhibiting symptoms of the disease. And so there was some random testing of 54 of them. And out of the 54, 10 of the results have come out positive. At least that is what I'm picking up from my sources there at the Sherman Police Station. These 10 currently are in isolation, and they are still waiting for the 44 results to know what the decisions they're going to take next, Gifty.
Well, Mamiesi, if you've been talking to the authorities, I mean, how are they taking this? This is certainly a worry, especially when there is absolutely not enough space in places like that. How are they managing this?
So, the authorities tell me they're trying to manage the situation. If you go to a typical cell in like a Sherman, the cells can take roughly about 50 to 70 inmates, which is too much compared to the sizes of the cell there, though I cannot tell the capacity that such cells can take. But authorities say they're trying to manage the situation. They have isolated those who are positive as of now. They haven't really told me what steps they have taken to deal with the remaining cell inmates who are there at the moment. But right now, what I know is they are adhering to the hygiene etiquettes of washing hands, applying hand sanitizers, and also ensuring social distancing. But that I cannot see being done in the cells, and I cannot say how many people are there currently. So they are trying to manage the situation with the current resources that they have. I haven't seen any major change as of now, whether they are going to expand the cells that they have currently or they're going to, separate some of the inmates and reduce the numbers in there. But I'm sure that moving forward, these are some of the considerations that they'll be making to ensure that the disease does not spread to everyone, Gifty.
Now, quick one before we finish this conversation, Mamiesi, how are people in the area reacting to this? Have they even heard about it in the first place?
I know that people know about it, especially the market women. And if you know where the Ashaman police station is right in the middle of the market. It's just by the main Ashaman station on the left-hand side if you're looking at the screen, and also on the right-hand side from where I'm sitting is where the market is. So there are several traders around that area, and they know about the situation that's going on. But then, though they know about it, there's not much they can do about it. They just say, they tell me that they have to ensure that they are keeping, to the hygiene rules and then the social distancing protocols. But Gifty, you know that practicing these things have become very difficult in such crowded areas. And we also know that it is possible that some officers may even have been exposed to these inmates. And the authorities there were telling me that some samples of officers have been taken as well to ensure that they, to know their condition at the moment, and also to ensure that they don't spread it, and then know the steps that they will be taking next to within this current situation.
Mamiesi, thank you for that update, but that's a very worrying situation there. Mamiesi Nyamiche Thompson there joining me from Ashaiman, where she's reporting that 10 out of 54 inmates there have tested positive to coronavirus. Authorities there say they have isolated these people from the rest, the remaining 44, but as Mamiesi is saying, some of the officers have also had their samples taken. A developing story we'll certainly keep our eyes on. Now, the hospitality industry has been given another lifeline to revamp following a crunch brought on by coronavirus restrictions in Ghana. This morning, the Ghana Tourism Authority has issued fresh directive asking hotels, food chains, restaurants and drinking bars to reopen their businesses despite some amount of restriction still in force. Now, these are highlights of the statement. According to the statement, 1, all hotels can operate as normal and host their guests subject to the specified elevated hygiene protocols on social distancing. That's number 1. Number 2, food chains and restaurants can operate sit down as well as pick up and delivery services whilst observing appropriate protocols. And then number 3, all nightclubs must remain closed. The 4th point is that drinking bars can operate whilst observing appropriate social distancing and hygiene protocols. And 5, in all situations, hospitality facilities should observe the staff management and workplace protocols and precautionary measures on public gatherings with a view of achieving social distancing and hygienic protocols as spelled out in the Executive Instrument 64. So that's what is contained in the statement. But you know that the hotels, for example, were not barred from operating under the EI, that's the executive instrument by President Akufo-Addo. It is rather the ban on some of their core businesses such as conferences, workshops, and the inability of their key clients to travel into the country, which forced them out. So how is the industry taking this? First, though, Chief Executive of the Ghana Tourism Authority, Akwesi Agyeman, who announced the new measures this morning, has been speaking to us on JoyNews desk here earlier today.
It was during the lockdown period that we said you cannot entertain sitting guests. So you could only do takeaway and pickups. For EI 64, you could go ahead. But what we've added on is that you have to keep the social distancing. So yes, you can admit guests to come in, but you must ensure that the social distancing protocols are adhered to. 1, you must ensure that your staff are wearing the necessary PPEs to prevent the spread of the disease if any of them are infected. So those are the things that we sought to clarify. So currently EI 65 is expired. EI 64 is in place, and that really allows for them to operate. We are part of the National COVID Task Force that includes the Ghana Health Service, the military, the Ghana Police Service, NADMO, the ambulance, NCA and other agencies, FDA and the rest. And so these directives, as issued to the public and also to the operators, have also been sent to the operational team. And so the police are very clear in their minds what they would expect if they, for example, get to a drinking bar. We also have inspectors who do the inspections for licensing and regulating these enterprises are also down monitoring the situation. And we've also asked that the general public assist. So if you see any suspicious behavior and people are not adhering to these protocols, you can call into the national call center and then make some complaints, and then we'll follow up through that chain.
Well, just last week, players in the industry met with President Akufo-Addo, at which meeting they made a strong case for revamping of the sector, which appears to be the hardest hit. Bella Ahu is president of the Ghana Tourism Federation and joins me live via Zoom. Hi, Bella.
Hello.
Right.
Good afternoon.
Well, Bella is joining us on phone, rather. Well, it's a pleasure to have you. First of all, what's the immediate reaction to this new offer from the Ghana Tourism Authority that essentially allows people within the industry to go to continue working with some minimal, amount of restriction, so to speak?
You can imagine it's all excitement. And again, some people are not sure. Is it true? Can we open? And we are talking to members all along since the statement was issued. And so the statement is telling us that the bar operators can now open, actually observing the protocol. Yeah. Hotels are supposed to be in operation again. All protocols must be observed.
Yeah.
So in actual fact, the industry is come alive this afternoon. And since we were actually not expecting some of these, people are calling to be sure, and we are excited about it.
Have you done any kind of research or any, asking around, so to speak, to find out whether people are actually willing to patronize such services in these times?
Yes, that is one reason. You can open, but as to whether it will be patronized,
yeah,
that is the other issue. But then the information is that you can open but observe the social distance. And we are trusting and believing that the sitting arrangement now has to change in bars and restaurants, where we have to observe all the protocols. And so we are excited. We've gone around one of few bars. Restaurants already are in operation, except that you cannot sit more than 25.
Exactly.
And so we've gone around, and most bar operators are quite excited.
Okay.
Now it's left to the public to actually observe the protocol. The sitting arrangement at few bars that we have gone around, actually the sitting arrangement is quite impressive. And so we think that it's now left with the public to observe them, not that sitting down and drawing the chair to be closer to a friend. And that is what the bar operators are actually emphasizing, that seriously we have to observe the protocol.
That brings me to my final question, which has to do with a big problem in this country, monitoring. When it comes to monitoring, who is going to monitor? Are there any systems you've put in place to make sure that people are doing the right thing? Because we know what people do when we leave them to do things by themselves.
We are actually educating and actually even marking the places we've been today. The bar operators are actually marking where a chair should be, where the next one should be, and then we are actually educating them that they really have to make sure that the protocols are observed, and that the public is not seated and then drawing the chairs closer. So we've been going around. We are still on the rounds and educating our people on how these things should be observed.
Thank you very much for your time, but I am very curious to see how this actually works. So hopefully next week we can come to you and get some details and updates on how it went. Bella Aho is the president of the Ghana Tourism Federation. So as you heard her, they're excited. People within the industry are excited that they can go back to work. But will people be willing to patronize the service? That's a question that she's still working to answer, she says, and also whether or not the marking and the systems they're putting in place will work. Now, as a measure to curb the spread of COVID-19, Ghana announced the closure of its borders on the 22nd of March, a week after it recorded its first 2 cases, all imported. The president extended the closure of all borders to at least 1 month more. But some Ghanaians living in the diaspora have said that the situation left them stranded in their host countries, and unfortunately they will be unable to return to their land of birth, at least until the ban is lifted. We'll be speaking to some of the affected persons, but before then, the Minister for Information has been speaking to this matter.
Citizens were asked to gather data on who is stranded outside the country so that you can even know the numbers and where they are, and use that data as a basis for decision making. It's our understanding that I think by the end of this week, they will ferry in the data that they have collated. So maybe by the end of this week, we can have some more clarity on the numbers that they have gathered. But just to put it in context, that directive to the missions was to them to gather data. And so the interpretation that is coming across that there's an impending evacuation, I think it should be put in its right context.
As he heard the Minister for Information, Kojo Ponkrumah, say there have been some arrangements which he wanted to clarify because it appears people were misconstruing it. Well, we do have a letter from the High Commission of Ghana's High Commission in London that provides some more details. We'll also be speaking to the Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister. We'll play that to you. But let me tell you what the letter from the High Commission of Ghana's High Commission in London says. It says, request for information on stranded Ghanaians. Now, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration of Ghana is collating information on Ghanaians and legal permanent residents who are stranded abroad as a result of the closure of international borders in containment of COVID-19 pandemic. It goes on to say that to this end, eligible Ghanaians who are prepared to pay, and that is bolding, I must say, says eligible nationals who are prepared to pay for their cost to travel to Ghana must submit their details specified below to the Ghana High Commission not later than close of day on Wednesday, 13th of May 2020, which is today. So it goes on to say what the things you need to bring: name and a copy of biodata page of passport, current location, telephone contact, WhatsApp contact, email address, date of travel from Ghana, original date of expected return to Ghana, copy of return ticket, reasons for inability to return to Ghana, and confirmation of ability to pay for the arranged air travel. And this information is brought to us, is coming from the High Commission in London. Now, let's get some Ghanaians living in a diaspora who are willing to relocate to Ghana, but are unable to do so as a result of the closure of all our borders. Bishop John Yao Cheche Man is in South Africa. He's a Ghanaian living in the diaspora, desperate to come home, but unable to do so. And before I also do that, let me let you know that we have Mr. Kuto also here in the studio with us. He'll help us, have that conversation. You're welcome to the show. So let's go to South Africa, where we talked to one of the Ghanaians who has been stranded. Hello, sir.
Yeah, hello.
How are you doing?
By the grace of God, God is taking care of us.
So what's your story really? How did you get stranded in South Africa?
Thanks. I came to South Africa for a conference. That was, I landed here, that was on the 5th March. And I think that after the conference, I was supposed to leave here on the 2nd of March. 22nd of March, sorry. So I think after the conference, I was preparing to take off, whereas I got to know that all the borders are closed, there's not going to be a flight. So from there, I think we have been stranded around.
So what was the arrangements? You were in a hotel?
Yeah, yes.
Are you still at the same hotel?
Yeah, I'm still in the hotel.
And the hotel still works despite the pandemic?
I think where I got, it was luckily the church who hosted me. Okay. There is one of the members, one of the executives who come to church there. So they told them, since there is no way to go, but there is no way I can go. So the only thing is to to stay around until this is over.
So as you're staying here, how long have you been staying there now, above the scheduled time of stay?
I think when I arrived, that was on the 5th March. From on the 5th March to now, that's almost about getting to 2 months plus, 2 months.
So you've been in South Africa for 2 months, 2 months above the time you intended to stay there?
Yeah.
How are you paying for the hotel bills and for food, and how is it like?
Here, by the grace of God, is my host who is taking care of me with my food and my hotels and everything.
Okay, so you were desperate to come back home to Ghana, right?
Yeah.
Okay. There is some information from the High Commission in London indicating that they're collating, details of Ghanaians who are stranded who want to come back home. But you have to be prepared to pay for the cost of your return home. What's your reaction to that?
Yes, I think I'm okay with that. Today, I had I had a message from the High Commissioner here, Your Excellency George Ezibwate, who also forwarded to me that we should forward our details because they are preparing. And if it is about to pay for the flight, I'm okay. And there are other Ghanaians also who are stranded here. If it's for us to pay for a flight for them to come and pick us home, we are very comfortable with it.
Okay, you're happy with that. I have never been stranded. I've never found myself in this situation, and I can imagine. Do you want to share with us how this has? How has it been for you? How has the feeling been like?
It is not normal. One of the terrible ones. It's like you're not comfortable. You're not free, especially being on a strange land, whereby you are limited to many things. Yours is to be on your room. You can't come out because if you come out, you will be questioned. And I think the other thing also is like in the area of trying to, it's not easy. It's not easy. It's very uncomfortable. But as long as I'm not the only one going through, I can't complain. Mine is to cope and to be alone because it's a situation of the COVID-19 that has produced this. So it's not comfortable, but I'll be more comfortable when I am at home with my family and my people. But be honest, I'm no one to talk to apart from my host. You don't go to church. There's nothing. It's not a normal life.
I can imagine. Well, now that you've indicated that you've already heard from the mission in South Africa and they're asking you to prepare for this, what we understand is an evacuation, you're happy to pay for it, then we're good to go, right? Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So that's Bishop Yao Cheche. He's a Ghanaian who's stranded in South Africa. He's happy to come back home. He says it doesn't matter I mean, if they have to pay for it, they're ready to pay for it. There are others, they're even prepared to pay for the others who are stranded there. And that's a very good thing. So what do we say about this thing? I mean, we've had this conversation here a couple of times. I have here with me, like I indicated earlier, an immigration expert, Wanda Victor Kuto. So we can have a quick chat on this one as well. So I'm sure you've seen this. What's your reaction to the government of Ghana's preparation ahead of a possible evacuation?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good evening to your viewers. You recall that last week we had this discussion, and my argument was that evacuation is welcoming. However, it should not be for free. So I'm not surprised that the Ghanaian government has taken a decision to evacuate Ghanaians all over the world, but with a cost. If we want to put this discussion in a proper context, then we probably have to look at other countries that have also started their evacuation. Let's look at the global statistics. So far, the US has evacuated over 72,000 people worldwide. India has just launched the Vande Bharat mission. This mission is expected to evacuate over 200,000 people across the world. Okay. And if successful, this mission will be the greatest rescue mission ever after the Gulf War, where they evacuated 170,000 people from Kuwait. So it is a welcoming news. However, I think that the Ghanaian government must add some human face in this entire process. When I say human face, I mean that Ghanaian students out there should not be asked to bear the cost, the Ghanaian student. And in the case of Ghanaians in the UK, I'm happy you have the letter here. The Ghanaians in the UK and the US, the Ghanaian government can assist them on humanitarian grounds. I must say, for as a matter of fact, that there's no legal obligation on government to evacuate Ghanaians back to Ghana for free. There's no legal obligation. But on humanitarian grounds, there are some categories of Ghanaians out there that have to be looked out for. So for Ghanaians in the US who had traveled on F1J1, the F1J1 visa holders are students who are in the US, who are Ghanaians. If you know the US terrain very well, there are categories of visas. So the A1, A2 for government officials, B1, B2 for those who have gone for conference, medicals, the F1, J1 for students. So the Ghana government can consider those on the F1, J1 visa category. And if the government takes the decision to evacuate those on the F1, J1 visa category, then government by necessary implication must add those who are also on F2 visa categories. The F2 are the dependents, are those who are depending on the F1, J1 visa category holders. So I think that it's a welcoming news, except the government must add some humanitarian face to the entire process. So that students must be brought back home for free. And more so because now, for example, the US and the UK have declared unemployment benefits for its citizens. Ghanaians out there who are working, who are schooling and working at the same time, will no longer have access to work. If you are aware, students in the US are allowed to work for 20 hours a week. Now, because of this COVID-19, they no longer have access to their work, and for that matter, supporting their education becomes very difficult. So if they are coming back home, probably will not have money to cater for their own fares. So government should add some humanitarian phase to the entire exercise. So my view is that government, it's a good news that government is trying to evacuate Ghanaians back home, except that for some categories of Ghanaians, not only students, diplomats, so the A1, A2 visa holders.
But diplomats won't have to pay anything. I mean, they're still taken care of by the states. So
so I'm just saying
they won't have to, if they have to be evacuated, they won't have to. They won't have any financial obligations.
I'm just saying it for the avoidance of doubt. Yes, I'm just saying for the avoidance of doubt. So, and then security personnel, as we speak now, 700 Ghanaian police. I wouldn't want to use the word stranded, but as we stand now, they're in South Sudan. They were scheduled back home somewhere last month before the outbreak of the virus in South Sudan. As a result, they are still in South Sudan now, and about 269 former office men are also in South Sudan. So government can also take action to bring these people back home. Now, in the case of Bishop John, what could be done for persons who are in the same situation like him now is for government to help push for the extension of their visas. Like he said he went for just a conference, and then the virus broke out, and then the South African borders was closed. Now, it's possible that his visa may have expired.
But then this is an evacuation, so certainly there has to be a diplomatic arrangement between within which people who are stranded there like him can be brought back to their country.
Of course, I'm even looking beyond the evacuation. Okay. Now, what if his visa expires and then he's evacuated back home? Do you know what that means in terms of immigration when he wants to go back to South Africa? And I'm happy that the South African Foreign Ministry has now nullified the Form 20 for persons who are in the same category like Bishop John. The Form 20 only means the letter of good cause, that when you overstay your visa in South Africa and you are returning to South Africa, you need to provide a Form 20 to show that you have not been declared as undesirable. So I'm happy that the South African government have put away the Form 20. So Ghana must move in that direction to kind of use diplomatic relations to help people who are in the same category like Bishop John. And away from South Africa, the extension of visa fees in the US is $455, which includes $88 for biometric. So Ghanaians who have also overstayed their visa, and I use this advisedly because in the US, you may have a valid visa, but you'll be out of status. The US visa only allows you to move from Ghana to the airport in the US. When you get to the airport, then you get your status to enter the US. So those probably who have overstayed their status and probably have an expired visa, who probably will not be able to come back to Ghana now, what government can do for them as a plan B is to help them in extending their visa so that when anytime they come back, going back to the US or South Africa or any other part of the world, they will not have immigration issues. Okay,
very interesting. Hopefully this works for people who are stranded outside the country, and hopefully you find your way back. Mr. Kuto, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us on this one. Unless you have any final words, we'll call it a day on that. Do you have any final words on this?
Nothing much. I'm just saying that it's a welcoming news. The government has decided to evacuate Ghanaians back home. And it's also very refreshing to hear that the taxpayers' money will not be used for this exercise. For example, the UK had their citizens paying £500 each. So it's good that Ghanaians will be paying for their fares. However, there are some categories of Ghanaians that government will have to reconsider. For example, students, of course, diplomats, and then people who do not have the means. Now, for people who do not have the means, what government can also do is to let them sign a promissory note. So government will take care of the cost now, but they will sign a promissory note, which is a legal commitment that in future they will reimburse the Ghanaian government.
Well, when we get the chance to talk to the authorities, we'll ask them whether this is an option for them, whether they're willing to fund, pre-finance this for those who can't afford it and get the monies paid back. We'll see how that goes. Thank you very much. I've been talking to Wanda Kuto. He's Wanda Victor Kuto. He's an immigration expert helping us with some analysis there. Now, government has urged the Ecowas bloc to fast-track the process of establishing an early warning center in Ghana to guarantee the security of citizens of member states. The current global health crisis of COVID-19, according to Vice President, has underscored the urgent need for a center in Ghana as established in some member states. Addressing members of the National Early Warning Task Force at the Jubilee House on Wednesday, Dr. Bawumia said a successful implementation of the center in Ghana will also ensure effective coordination among member states in times of violent conflicts.
Addressing members here at the Jubilee House, Vice President Mahmoud Bawumia said the government of Ghana is keen on ensuring the institutionalization of the early warning center here in Ghana to prevent destructive crisis in the Ecowas region.
For some time now, Ecowas member states and the Ecowas Commission have been considering effective early warning and response mechanisms in Ecowas countries to avert destructive crises in our region. The crises that we tend to see have broad effects across all countries, whether it was Ebola that we all had to think about, whether it was SARS, whether it is CSM, we have to, and today we are thinking also of COVID-19. All of these have impacts just beyond one country. The ECOWAS early warning system aims primarily at guaranteeing human security. The system envisages the establishment of a fully integrated and functional early warning system within member states of the ECOWAS. The system is intended to provide timely reports and analysis for effective responses that will prevent and mitigate violent conflicts, amongst others, in the sub-region. With the establishment of national centers, ECOWAS member states will be able to share information, implement conflict prevention, and manage crisis while protecting human security at national and regional levels. The center's role is to warn government of threats to human security, propose appropriate action, coordinate, and ensure monitoring of the implementation of response to the warning. In view of the time constraint, I suggest a doubling of efforts and maximum cooperation to get Ghana ready for the assessment and the launch. On its part, the ECOWAS Commission will provide support and logistics to fully equip the center once established. I call on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration for its maximum support for the work of the task force.
Now, coffin makers and other players in the funeral industry are lamenting a huge slump in their business due to the outbreak of coronavirus. Many morgues remain full because families are waiting on the presidential ban on mass gatherings to be lifted so they can organize their big funerals. JoyNews' Henry Kwesi-Bedu visited some casket makers and funeral homes in Accra and has filed this report.
The government announced the ban on funerals. Limited the number of funerals. It has affected operations.
That is Emmanuel Abbey, the manager of the Dakuman-based Abbey Caskets and Funeral Services, lamenting how his business is grinding to a halt. He's been forced to lay off about 80% of his entire workforce since the ban on all forms of social gatherings, including funerals.
Prior to this thing, we had about 17 staff. Now we've reduced our staff to about 4.
Walking around his showroom, Mr. Abbey points at caskets that would have been purchased had it not been for the restrictions on large funerals.
Before COVID, we were doing brisk funerals. People were buying caskets. At least within a week, we sell around 7 caskets. We also do about a minimum of 5 funerals a week. But now, the whole of April, I think there was no funerals at all.
Solomon Ajari operates a casket crafting shop close to the Kolobu Teaching Hospital, as many Ghanaians are unwilling to organize private burials with 25 persons. Solomon's polished caskets remain packed in his shop. He tells us about the financial difficulty in taking care of his family and staff because of low sales.
As I'm talking to you now, I haven't paid some of my workers. I think today is 12. I haven't paid them. So challenges there is a must. I'm having it. You see, and you see you can't get it live formally. Now things are not like how it is once we are not in a lockdown. We are not in this program. You see, so we are trying to balance ourselves. You see, I've lost some of my 2-3 workers to be in a house for the meantime. When things started moving, I'll call them back. Because when I'm having all of them, the payment, I'll have a problem in the payment. You see.
Mary Lamte is the owner of a funeral home, but her business has also slumped.
First, no na koso, but say corona anything. I'm a jumana bafom. First, no yet me turn there, but say there a week na any papa tobacco, a woman 2 weeks time na be tobacco. Into be ba obetina wo sa wonye adwuma. Ti say wonye bi wo ye nso a, eno nso nipa ne beto ahye da say a no ma be fa nso eno nso mo ba no mo be fa pe wonye bi nya biom. na afi de wuti wo saa na why mobile de odi be man kwala di krapo no eya na ehun ayedin.
Abe wants Ghanaians to bury their dead now and later take a decision on organizing elaborate funerals when the ban is lifted.
To some extent, it's a blessing in disguise. Why should I say that? Now, prior to this, or hitherto, a lot of people complain about expensive funerals. It is about time Ghanaians take a look at the way they do funerals to cut down the costs. So this period will really educate Ghanaians to see how best they can reorganize their funerals to tailor their pocket, to suit their pocket.
If the COVID-19 pandemic persists, many jobs will be affected. Perhaps the coronavirus is telling Ghanaians to change their large and lavish ways of organizing funerals. Henry Kwesibedi's report for JoyNews.
Bury your dead now, do the funerals later. Away from that, concerns have emerged that the Supreme Court's decision allowing Martin Amidu to continue to hold office despite exceeding retirement age could spell doom for young people seeking employment into public service. Former Deputy AG, I should say, Dr. Dominic Ayeni, dragged the current Attorney General to court, arguing Mr. Amidu cannot hold office as Special Prosecutor because he is more than 65 years of age. The court, in a majority 5-2 decision, disagreed, dismissing the case. Court correspondent Joseph Akable spoke to Dr. Ayeni shortly after proceedings.
I must say I am extremely surprised by the decision of the court today, dismissing my writ by 5-2 majority in favor of the Attorney General. As you would all recall, this was a writ challenging the appointment of Mr. Martin Amidu as a Special Prosecutor, and the basic argument of the writ was that Mr. Martin Amidu, at the time of his appointment, was 66 years old, and by the Constitution, especially in Article 199 of the Constitution, I argue that he is above the age for appointment into the public service. And my point was that the office of the Special Prosecutor falls squarely within the public services of Ghana. And at the age of 66, he was above the mandatory age of retirement of 60, and then also the voluntary age of appointment on contract of 65. And so I'm at a loss as to why the court today said that my writ has been dismissed. But the court didn't give any reasons, and said that we could apply for the reasons given by the judges in the majority and the minority from the registry of the court. So until then, I'm unable to say why, and we'll get back to you when the reasons are available.
But knowing that the decision is 5-2, are you considering the possibility of, studying it and maybe a review on the books for you?
Well, I don't think the review window is very narrow, unless you can show that the court erred, grievously, and that the fact that the court erred, resulted in a miscarriage of justice. It should not be possible for the court to take a second look at its ruling. I don't want us to come back re-arguing our case. So I don't think, we will be thinking of a review. Unfortunately, the precedent that is going to be set will allow for appointments of persons who are over the age of 65 years. Persons who are 70 years of age can be appointed into the public service after they've retired at the age of 60, and not giving our young people the opportunity to serve the Republic in the public services of Ghana. And I think that is a foreseeable consequence of the decision of today. But until we see the reasons filed by the justices, I'm unable to say anything further.
At this stage, what do you want the Special Prosecutor to do going forward? He has no writ against him now.
No, the Special Prosecutor, I didn't sue the Special Prosecutor. I sued, let me say this. Initially, he was brought in as a defendant because we thought that he was a proper party to be joined to the action. given the fact that he was the one who was going to be materially affected by the decision. And so we brought him in, but the court thought otherwise. And that's why he was struck out as a party. Going forward, I think the Attorney General, will just, we will all abide by the ruling of the court.
Dr. Dominic Ayine is former Deputy Attorney General. NDC Member of Parliament for Boko Central has opened up about his relationship with Special Prosecutor Martin Ebike Amidu. The Special Prosecutor has filed a suit in court citing the Boko Central MP for abuse of office and accused him of tax evasion in the clearance of vehicles. In an interview with Evans Mensah on PM Express, Mr. Ayariga said he felt haunted by the man he calls his father.
He decides that he wants to prosecute me. I laugh at it because, really, the customs officers, they did the assessment of the duty. They assessed the duty. And so if you are prosecuting me in court, I'll bring them to come and testify. Did I come to them? No. As we speak, I still don't even know them. I only see their names on documents and correspondences, but I don't even know any of the customs officers personally. But we will subpoena them as witnesses. If I've ever approached them to even clear a vehicle, I've never. It's an agent. And very interesting, all lawyers who are listening to us will tell you that you probably should not even be prosecuting me alone. You should be prosecuting me, the agent, and the customs officer. Because there's no way I, the owner of the vehicle, who never dealt directly with the customs officer, you can easily succeed in court against me when you haven't brought in the agent.
Yeah.
Unless you're saying that the agent will come and say, oh, the minister, the member of parliament, induced me to go and corrupt the customs officer. And I can say on authority, that the customs officer did appear before the Special Prosecutor's Office interrogators and indicated very clearly that they don't know me. They've never dealt with me, which is true.
Because they dealt with the agent.
They dealt with the agent. And they did admit that it is a common practice that sometimes they make mistakes in assessing the values of vehicles and the duties that should be paid on them. In spite of this evidence, my father still insists on prosecuting me.
Okay, so I need to ask, because you mentioned that it can't be because he's seeking justice.
Parliament, it gives you a loan that you should buy
the vehicle.
And then you choose that I'm buying 3 vehicles, I'm adding money to buy 3 vehicles. It's a loan, for God's sake. And I know on authority, and I believe this will be proven in court, that he wrote to the bank that gave us the loan, asking whether somebody who they extend a loan to can buy more than 1 vehicle.
What the bank said?
The bank said, well, it's a loan we've given to the person. We are more interested
in repaying,
in the security. And the person has used his salary and his ex gratia as collateral. So whether he buys 10 vehicles or buys 2 vehicles, that's a matter
So he has this evidence?
He has the communication from the bank. He has the communication from the bank.
So it begs...
So, I mean, I have just decided to keep quiet all this while because really, well, you've sent me to court, let's go to court.
It begs the question, why would a father do that to a son?
And that's the question you should ask him. Go and ask him, why would you do that to somebody you describe as your son?
Yeah, he did. In fact, he was the first to say
He was the first to describe me as a son. So ask him, why would you do that to somebody you describe as your son? What is the basis?
You said in this interview that it can't possibly be because he's seeking justice. If that's not what it is, what is it?
Because knowing the lawyer that he is, okay, I assume that he also appreciates the fact that to proceed to, let's say, prosecute me on a charge of abuse of office for personal gain for branding a vehicle, knowing the lawyer that he is, I assume that he has to prove that I branded the vehicle or that the vehicle was branded on my instruction. Okay, but in a clear situation where I actually didn't brand it, I know who branded it, and I told her it was Mr. A who branded it. And you don't even make the effort to find out from Mr. A whether he branded it and why he branded it. Clearly, to me, you're not seeking justice. You're not. You're not seeking to do justice.
What is it? What would you call this then?
Well, maybe a father finding a way to teach his son how to live and the lessons of life. I don't know, but I don't believe that that's justice.
Is it a witch hunt?
I feel hunted. There's no doubt about that. Whether he's a witch is another matter, but I feel hunted.
There's a close line. If it's not prosecution, it's persecution. Is it persecution?
I have no doubt that this is persecution.
Evans Mensah had that interview yesterday. We played it on PM Express. Well, it's time for me to wrap up, but let's use a bit of time we have left to do your messages. This one says, I really feel disappointed with the court ruling on the Office of the Special Prosecutor. We seem to interpret the law to suit government appointment. This will go a long way to affect future decisions. How very old persons will be appointed with reference to this ruling. Ghana is losing it. Noah Sabuli sent that from Tamale. Dr. Ayene's writ has no merit and mischievous because I have been appointed for reasons of his professional, I'm not sure. He said the question is, how many of them in Special Prosecution Office are more than 66 years? I think issues of no merit should be thought through before going to court. You don't add your name, but thanks for sending your message. Okay, I think I have read this one already. This one is talking about the evacuation. It says evacuation of Ghanaian citizens abroad is the best solution because they are suffering. It's coming from Frank Agbema, BSA, and some of you also add your thoughts about, evacuation. Some say they should stay there until the coronavirus pandemic is over, but those are really your thoughts. There's more news at myjoyonline.com. When you log on, certainly scroll all the way down to the bottom of that page for our YouTube link so you can follow us from there.